Nübüvvet, hakikat arayışında peygamber ışığı.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. The purpose of this paper is to investigate Sayyid Nursi's interpretation of some of the universal aspects of the Qur'an's miraculousness or inimitability and the proofs these comprise of the universal prophethood of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After looking very briefly at the growth of the doctrine of the Qur'an's inimitability, the paper looks briefly at Nursi's approach to its language and composition aspects, which are generally accepted to be its most brilliant form of miraculousness and underlie his interpretation of its universal aspects. The third section, in addition to drawing attention to the proofs they furnish for Muhammad's prophethood, examines Nursi's interpretation of the Qur'an's universality within the framework of three of its main bases. Only the main points in each section will be pointed out. If we look very briefly at the development of the doctrine of the Qur'an's inimitability, the notion of İ'caz, meaning literally rendering incapable, though not used in the Qur'an in this context, is linked to the Qur'an's challenge to its opponents and critics to produce a text similar to itself, and their inability, that's the ajz, to do this, from which is derived the term mu'jiza, meaning miracle. Despite attempts to either imitate or parody the Qur'an's eloquence or to refute it, both at the time of its revelation and subsequently, the prevailing view is that none has been successful. It wasn't until the end of the 3rd century of the Hijrah, that's the 9th century, that İ'caz came to be used as a technical term for the Qur'an's inimitability. The main factor in the growth of the doctrine is said to have been doctrinal challenges to the new religion of Islam and Christian polemics and interrogation concerning Islamic teaching on such questions as prophethood, revelation and miracles. This compelled Muslim thinkers to produce works proving the authenticity of their religion. The polemical treatise Hujjat al-Nubûwah by the Arab literary genius al-Jahiz may be cited as an example. I'm going to skip this. The thing is that in the course of time, the Qur'an's İ'caz-ı became increasingly associated with its eloquence, that's balagha, and particularly with its composition or nazm. And the development of these ideas culminated in the works Asrar al-Balagha and Delilleri الإعجاز by Abdul Qahir al-Jurjani, who was Nursi's chief inspiration in this matter. In his works dealing with the Qur'an's inimitability or miraculous, Sayyid Nursi is seen to place paramount importance on aspects related to the Qur'an's eloquence as balagha and composition or nazm. Following the authorities mentioned above, he emphasizes that its inimitability arises from the high level of its eloquence, and that its key and disclosure is Arabic rhetoric. Further to this, he posits that the source of its eloquence is its composition, its nazm, but its composition according to the meanings expressed, nazm ma'ani, that is, the ordering of the meanings, which is the natural channel for ideas. That is, the meanings govern, not the words. From this it is seen why Nursi and the masters of the past, by whom he was inspired, stressed that the Arabic rhetorical sciences were prerequisite to discovering and deciphering what God desires to communicate through his book and for proof of its inimitable nature. We shall now examine some aspects of the Qur'an's miraculousness related to its universality and proofs of prophethood. In this paper, by the Qur'an's universality is meant as possessing multiple levels of meanings, whereby, being the pre-eternal word of God, that's Kelam Ezeli, it addresses all times and all peoples. In both the earlier and later periods, Nursi emphasizes this question, saying that the Qur'an uses styles that are familiar to ordinary people as a concession to their understanding, since its main purpose is guidance, and they form the majority. It is for this reason, too, that he says, in reference to the Qur'an's nazm, or composition, in most places the Qur'an is not specific and makes its statements general, and has ordered its sentences and positioned them in such a way that numerous different possibilities unfold from its various aspects, and different peoples may all receive their shares. That is to say, according to Nursi, it is by virtue of the manner in which the Qur'an is composed and ordered that it possesses qualities that may be described as universal. We shall now examine Nursi's interpretation of the Qur'an's universality within the framework of three of its main bases and the proofs these furnish for Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood. The source of the Qur'an's universality. The Qur'an's universality and miraculous comprehensiveness stem from the fact that it is the speech of the glorious creator of the universe and proceeds from the ultimate degree of his dominicality or lordship, that's rububiyyah. That is, the Qur'an is God's word in respect of his being sustainer of all the worlds and God of all beings. Its divine source and its being a pre-eternal address gives the Qur'an a timeless nature. It is a perpetual sign or miracle, and in one sense is in a state of continuous revelation. Nursi calls this its youth. He says it preserves its freshness and youth every age as though newly revealed, and thereby addresses all levels of mankind in every age. Another side of this is that the Qur'an is multi-layered and multifaceted, so that, descending through all the degrees of dominicality, it spreads its light to all the thousands of levels of those it addresses, the understandings of which are all different. Nursi explains and illustrates this aspect of the Qur'an's miraculousness in terms of its comprehensiveness, that's Jami'at, that is, the comprehensiveness of its words, meanings, contents, styles, and so on. A second basis of the Qur'an's miraculous universality is its being the key to understanding the meaning and purposes of creation. That is, it's expounding the divine acts that constitute the beings in the cosmos and the names and attributes from which they proceed, that what it calls the ayat or signs in the universe. In Nursi's words, the Qur'an has an eye that sees and encompasses the whole universe and holds it before it like the pages of a book, describing its levels and worlds. Since the cosmos consists of words inscribed by the pen of divine power and expressing truths similar to the Qur'an, it becomes a mighty Qur'an. From this emerges one of the chief functions and proofs of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that is, to disclose and teach the divine purposes in the universe's creation and the meanings of that mighty book. Indeed, because of his comprehensive functions and the proofs he embodies, he himself is known as the supreme sign of the book of the universe. At this point, it may be mentioned that Nursi frequently points out that just as the Qur'an's miraculousness is proof of Muhammad's prophethood, so his miracles prove the truth of its revelation and is itself a miracle of his. Indeed, as stated in all Islamic sources, the Qur'an was his supreme miracle in proof of his claim to prophethood. A third basis of the Qur'an's universality is the comprehensiveness of the knowledge it contains. One aspect of this, Nursi explains as the Qur'an having a different kind of miraculousness corresponding according to the understanding of all the classes of humanity and is indicating its miraculousness to each in a different way. That is, the guidance and knowledge it imparts is suitable to each class it addresses. In the 25th word, he describes these various kinds of miraculousness, which he says, number 40, in the light of certain verses. Indeed, he claims that all the Qur'an's verses have an aspect which looks to each class. But what it teaches is the same. It is rather that its lessons have different levels, and each class of men understand them according to its degree. It follows from this that the Qur'an contains in some form knowledge pertaining to all areas of human life. Down the ages, scholars of every branch of science and knowledge, and followers of all the spiritual paths, under the tutelage of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ, have received instruction, guidance, and inspiration from it pertaining to their own field. And it was the Prophet who was the supreme interpreter of the knowledge contained in these numerous books comprising the Qur'an, and was its guide and instructor, all of which furnished powerful proofs of his prophethood. In the full version of this paper, an aspect of the Qur'an's universality is illustrated with two related topics that Nursi dwells on or elaborates. The first is knowledge related to social and legal matters, which form the basis of the religion and Sharia of Islam and gave rise to the reputedly miraculous changes wrought by Islam in the world of humanity. The second concerns knowledge related to science and scientific advances. And before this, it is noted that a significant feature of the Qur'an that allows it to address the peoples of all times and places, that is, its perpetual youth, is its expressing its guidance in the form of universal principles. This, Nursi says, is a feature of its miraculous conciseness, or İ'caz, a rhetorical device that is one foundation of the Qur'an's inimitability. In connection with knowledge related to science, here we note the following. The elusive, multivalent nature of many Quranic verses, in this case, some alluding to the discoveries of modern science, was a matter of concern to Nursi insofar as it is the concomitant of the conceptions of the Qur'an as having multiple levels of meaning and as containing in some form all knowledge, which is the basis of its universality and necessitates the application of the rhetorical, linguistic, and religious sciences to interpret them. The view that the Qur'an contains such predictive verses found expression in the genre of exegesis known as scientific exegesis of tafsir ilmi, which seeks to show that the Qur'an predicts the discoveries of modern science and to interpret the Qur'an in the light of science's findings. The influence of this genre is to be seen in Nursi's exposition of Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 31 to 33, where he suggests that by mentioning the miracles of the prophets, the Qur'an is indicating the future scientific discoveries and technological progress to be made by men, and is thereby urging and encouraging them to achieve them. Just as this interpretation, which links human progress to the miracle of Adam, known as the teaching of the names, extends the Qur'an's miraculous universality into the modern age, so it carries over the relevance of Muhammad ﷺ's prophethood into the modern age, since the Qur'an was his supreme miracle, and he was the seal of the prophets, and the former prophets' miracles were like a single confirmatory miracle of his claims, and who, with his universality, manifested the divine names comprehensively. Can I read the conclusion, or have I?
No, right. You have done.
Okay, I've just got a short conclusion here. With effect from the earliest works setting out proofs of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophethood, the inimitable Qur'an was advanced as his supreme miracle in proof of it. It was in this context that what came to be accepted as the doctrine of the Qur'an's inimitability developed, which was centered on the Qur'an's unsurpassable linguistic and literary qualities, and particularly on its nazm or composition. On his own admission, Sayyid Nursi followed in the footsteps of the acknowledged masters of this discipline in his works dealing with these matters. However, the conditions obtaining during his lifetime drove him in his endeavors to prove the Qur'an's inimitability to seek new approaches, as a result of which, as the new side, he laid particular emphasis on its universal aspects, many of which proceed from its inimitable composition, or to elucidate them in a way that is often detailed, yet accessible to peoples of all sorts, both familiar and unfamiliar with the Quranic and Arabic sciences. In this paper, only the basic features of some main universal aspects of the Qur'an's inimitability as explicated by Nursi have been outlined, and attention has been drawn to related proofs of prophethood. It may be suggested that while the apologetic nature of the proof of the Qur'an's miraculous nature was basic to works dealing with the subject from its earliest formulation, as the basis of the proof of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's claim to prophethood, and Nursi's works are no exception to this, as he himself states at the beginning of the 25th word, his focusing on universal aspects of its inimitability reflects his desire to demonstrate to all classes of people the continuing relevance in the modern world, in the modern age, of both the Qur'an and Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam's prophetic mission. Thank you very much.
İstanbul İlim ve Kültür Vakfı